held a belief that I was exaggerating it for attention or just to be difficult. She had also made a comment about me needing to build up a tolerance. Phil was absolutely horrified by her confession. He told my husband that he was frozen in that moment, unsure of what to do. He was afraid that if he accused Mill publicly, she would create a massive scene and deny everything or to try to twist the story to her advantage. At the same time, he was worried that I might accidentally eat the contaminated food before he could get to me if he didn't act immediately. So, in what he could only describe as a moment of pure panic, his solution was to grab my container and throw it directly into the trash, ensuring I could not eat it. He had intended to explain everything to my husband and me in private later. But the situation escalated much more quickly than he had anticipated. As my husband relayed all of this to me, I felt a wave of nausea and was unable to speak for several minutes. The thought that Mill would deliberately try to make me sick to intentionally trigger a potentially fatal allergic reaction was utterly terrifying. It's one thing for her to be annoyed or make passive-aggressive comments, but this was a malicious act of betrayal that I simply cannot comprehend. My husband was furious with his mother. He told Phil that while he now understood the motivation behind throwing the food away, his father should have informed us immediately or at least pulled me aside discreetly to warn me. Phil apparently agreed with this and was extremely remorseful for how he had handled the reveal, explaining again that he was just so shocked by what his wife had done. Later that same evening, Phil called me directly to apologize profusely for throwing away the food without an immediate explanation. He then told me himself what he had seen do, and he sounded exhausted and deeply sorry. He felt he had to protect me, but acknowledged that he had done it in a clumsy and alarming way. Phil then asked if the three of us, my husband and I, could come over the next day to talk with Mill present. He said that he wanted her to have to face us and admit what she had done. Despite my dread, I knew it was something that needed to happen. So we agreed. The following day, we went to their house where we found both Mill and Phil waiting. The atmosphere in the room was incredibly tense. Phil began the conversation by stating he had something important to say, wanting Mill to listen before telling us the truth herself. He then recounted in clear, specific detail what he had seen her do to my food. After he finished, he turned to her and told her to explain to us why she did it. Mill's reaction was nothing short of explosive. While she started crying, it felt like tears of anger rather than remorse. She didn't deny having put the allergen in my food. Instead, she began yelling and deflecting blame. She shouted that I was the problem, that my allergy made everything too difficult for her, and that she was tired of catering to my needs. She accused me of being too sensitive and too demanding, even going so far as to accuse me of trying to alienate her from her own son. She insisted that she just wanted to see if I was faking and claimed that a little bit wouldn't have hurt me that much. A statement which is dangerously untrue, as even a trace amount could kill me. My husband completely lost his temper at that point, telling her she was unbelievable and that she could have killed me. He asked her if she had any comprehension of the severity of her actions, but she just continued crying and screaming that it was my fault for being the way I am, claiming that I had made her do it by being so difficult. Throughout her entire tirade, Phil remained very quiet, just looking at her with a cold, stony expression on his face. When she finally quieted down into exhausted sobs, Phil spoke, telling her that he didn't recognize the person she had become and that her actions were unforgivable. There was never any apology directed at me from Mill. Not a single word of remorse was offered for what she did, only blame and accusations. I told her directly that her actions were malicious and dangerous, and that I could never trust her again, and wanted nothing more to do with her. Her response was to start screaming that I was the one breaking up the family and turning her son and husband against her. It was a truly horrible and ugly scene, and we left soon after that. My husband told his mother that he needed space and could not speak to her for the time being. I have no idea where we go from here. While my Phil seems to be on our side, he is still married to this woman. My husband is completely disgusted with his mother, and I am still trying to process the horrifying fact that my mother-in-law actively tried to harm me. This has moved far beyond a simple item and into a living nightmare. Update 2. A week later, It's been a little over a week now since Phil's revelation about Mill's attempt to contaminate my food and the ugly confrontation that followed. Instead of improving, things seem to be actively getting worse. After leaving their house that day, my husband and I decided we needed to implement a strict no contact rule with Mill for the foreseeable future. My husband called Phil to inform him of this decision, explaining that while we appreciate him telling the truth, we cannot interact with Mill until she truly acknowledges the severity of her actions and agrees to seek professional help. Even then, I honestly can't imagine ever wanting to be around her again. Phil told my husband he understood our position and sounded very tired and sat over the phone. He mentioned that the situation at his home was terrible, reporting that Mill was either giving him the silent treatment or blaming him for ruining everything. Thankfully, Mill has not tried to contact me directly. She has, however, been relentlessly contacting my husband with multiple long, rambling text messages. In these texts, her tone shifts wildly between feigned crying, sharp accusations, and blatant attempts to guilt trip him. She has accused him of abandoning her and has claimed that I have somehow brainwashed him. She continues to minimize her actions, repeating that she didn't mean any real harm and was just frustrated with my demands. There is no indication that she understands how dangerous her actions were, as she keeps writing things like, "It was only a tiny bit, and your wife exaggerates things." My husband has handled this very well, either not responding to her messages or replying very briefly to state that her understanding of the situation is incorrect and that he will not discuss it further until she takes responsibility. These responses from him usually just trigger another barrage of angry or tearful messages from her. The wider family has now become aware of what happened because Phil apparently felt the need to tell his siblings the truth after discovering that Mill was spreading a completely different version of the events. We heard from my husband's aunt, Phil's sister, that Mill had been telling people that Phil had misunderstood the situation. She claimed she was just trying to add some flavor to my bland food, and that I had overreacted and caused a huge fight, which resulted in Phil wrongly taking my side. We also learned that she has been telling some relatives that I have Munchausen's or that I'm faking the entire allergy for attention. Phil's sister is horrified by Mill's actions and has been very supportive, calling me to express her shock and tell me how sorry she is that we are going through this. She admitted that Mill has always been somewhat difficult and self-centered, but this behavior is beyond anything she could have imagined. She also confirmed that Mill has been calling everyone in the family crying and desperately trying to get people to side with her. Meanwhile, Mill's own sister, who is my husband's other aunt, is apparently supporting Mill without reservation. She has been calling my husband to tell him he is being cruel to his mother, insisting that Mill is a wreck and that we are exaggerating the entire situation. She even had the nerve to say that I should have been more understanding of Mill's stress from hosting and having to deal with my special requirements. My husband eventually had to hang up on her when she refused to listen to reason. A few days ago, the situation escalated when Mill showed up unannounced at our apartment while my husband was at work. I was working from home and heard the doorbell ring repeatedly. When I looked through the peephole and saw it was her, I did not open the door. She then began banging on the door and calling out my name, crying that she just wanted to talk so we could sort this out. I remained silent, hoping she would leave. After about 10 minutes of banging and calling for me, she started yelling, shouting that I was heartless and that I was destroying her family and that this was all my fault. My neighbor across the hall opened his door to see what was causing the commotion, and upon seeing him, Mill glared for a moment before starting to cry again, telling him that I wouldn't let her see her son, which wasn't true since he wasn't even home. She finally left after my neighbor threatened to call building security. The whole experience left me shaken, feeling like a prisoner in my own home. I immediately called my husband, who was furious that she had come to our home. He then called his father, who sounded distraught, to learn what had happened. Phil said that Mill had stormed out of their house earlier, declaring she was going to fix things with me. He apologized for her behavior, explaining that he had tried to stop her, but she was completely irrational and wouldn't listen. The stress from all of this is immense and is affecting both my husband and me. It's impacting my sleep and my ability to concentrate on